This episode is sponsored by the Guild of Calamitous Intent. Oh, viewers, I may be a simple YouTube reviewer, but I am not afraid to speak my mind on difficult subjects like gun control or the Second Amendment. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got an episode to discuss.
No wonder that kid from the playground stole your pail. He knows you can't shoot.
As I once pointed out in Season 1's Square Peg, King of the Hill tends to take certain topics and, instead of putting forth a broad political statement, tends to keep those topics settled in a question about character. This isn't always true, but on the whole it is their general strategy. And for this episode, we open with the character question of, what is Bobby actually good at? Oh sure, he's a funny kid, and if that plastic head could talk, I'm sure it could tell us some other strong qualities he has, but what sort of skill sets does he possess? And more importantly, what sort of thing could he be good at that would both surprise and delight Hank? If you think about it, it's really a tall order for the writers. They have to come up with something that didn't already have a reasonable chance of occurring in Bobby's life so far. Hank can't just be magically surprised that Bobby can ride a bike well or is able to organize things in stunning fashion. These are two people who have lived together for years and have a pretty good idea of what the other one can do. In a fit of brilliance, the writers decided to use the Texas State Fair as a way of showing us how good, but mostly bad, Bobby is at various games of chance. He's mostly just goofing off, much to his father's chagrin and my disgust. I mean, my god, Bobby, those are ping pong balls that have been just used in the State Fair for God knows how long, and you're putting them in your mouth? What are you doing? Ew! But then comes the duck shooting game. This is where Bobby seems to enter some form of bullet time. Now, what I find interesting here is that it would be easy to just say, oh, Bobby must have some good hand-eye coordination. He does play those video games after all. But, speaking as someone who has both done a little bit of shooting and a little bit of gaming in his life, I do think the two are fairly different skill sets. For shooting, you have to factor things in like delay, arm and core strength, balance, how good you are at dealing with recoil, and, if you're trying to hit a moving target, which way the wind is a-blowin'. Whereas video games are more about choosing clear, decisive actions, boldly jumping off cliffs, and knowing how to manipulate and navigate certain systems. Now, what I really enjoy about this particular episode is that while it does very much lean into the gun-loving attitude that is prevalent in Texas, it does not forget to remind us all that guns are still dangerous items and that children should have limited access, if even that. Also, let's remember that this episode exists in a pre-Columbine world, where the idea of kids going out and shooting each other was virtually non-existent. But even with that consideration in mind, kids have been getting into their parents' gun stashes and accidentally shooting people for decades, so Peggy's concern about Bobby being too young for a gun does still feel warranted. And yet, because this is still a funny comedy show, we are taken on a splendid tour of gun ownership and wallow in how indulgent and casual Arlen is about guns.
Where's the children's gun section?
Aisle 47.
And that ain't no BB gun or super squirter either, that is all real. But instead of making this a whole, coming-of-age story where Bobby finally crosses the threshold into gun ownership, that whole factor is made almost irrelevant. Let's hear Hank lay out the main point himself.
But I never get to bond with Bobby on account of he's not good at much. I don't want to wait till the cat's in the cradle and Bobby's too busy with a propane business of his own.
And it's this desire to bond with his son that keeps things from feeling too, it has an agenda or something. It could have felt very oh, thank God I chose to have a gun that day, otherwise the neighborhood would have been doomed, wink. But they also did not make it an after-school special where Eddie the Eagle autofellatios himself with his horrible beak. I think after the cigarette episode from last season, it seems that the showrunners decided to really hit the brakes on these direct-to-camera moral lessons, which I'm extremely glad they did. And they didn't even need to make it about guns for this episode. This plot could have been focused on any number of topics, such as developing a shared love for golf or boxing, but because it is guns, we also get a lot of mileage out of some shooting jokes. Plus, these two are just having so much fun together, it's adorable.
Can I put a gun rack on my bike?
Do you know how long I've been waiting for you to ask me that?
Oh, and a little side note here, but the animation and backgrounds have already significantly improved from Season 1. That familiar soft blue wallpaper in Hank and Peggy's room has finally come into play. No more of that awful yellow or wood paneling crap. Ugh. I would call the wallpaper teal, but, I'm colorblind, especially to blues and purples, so let me know what color these actually are. And no, before you ask, what color do you see? I see it as frickin' teal, but when I say, oh, that's teal, everyone tells me I'm wrong, so whatever, world. Anyway, a lifetime of colorblind questions aside, now with guns in hands, Hank and Bobby head down to the gun club.
I always thought this was a crack house.
Oh, Bobby, sweet Bobby, what a cutting bit of world awareness. I love to see it. But no, you won't find any crackheads or debutantes here. Just a familiar face, just Dale of all people, the man of the people himself, just hanging out and talking about gun stuff in a way that feels very reminiscent of how girls in high school will gossip about each other from time to time.
Hank's jacket is so Desert Storm.
Ah yes, I used to hang out with girls like that back in the day, although only a couple had rat heads mounted to their wall. I lived in a very classy place, you know what I mean? What's interesting about this section is how Hank is definitely wary and uncomfortable with Dale and his budding militia, since they're the kind of people that Hank would consider unreliable and weird. He's just coming here to let Bobby use the range, and I think it's this factor that keeps this whole plot very nice and clean. Hank isn't buying these guns for Bobby with the intent of training his son how to shoot a fellow human being in self-defense, but rather to encourage the awe-inspiring display that Bobby showed at the state fair. It's much less, get ready to blast them in the head if they try to attack your mother and me, and much more, I wonder how his spacing is, and can he hit the center of that target? And boy, can he ever.
Now, Bobby, you've got to take it slow and... oh my God!
Bobby's expert shooting attracts the attention of this odd busybody who is just here to point out that there's a big old tournament father-son fun shoot coming up, which is apparently sponsored by the Arlen Endowment for the Arts. And yes, that sounds a little ridiculous, but just you wait, we'll get to a different kind of creative and artistic shooting range before long.
Later, Pops.
Pops?
And by the way, Kane Skeddeberg did nothing wrong, and I will maintain that to my grave. I'll even frickin' prove it in the court of public opinion. But for now, we arrive, like a bride to her bathroom, to the thing we've been waiting for all day, the central conflict. When Hank goes to shoot, he finds... this happens. Yes, it turns out that every time he tries to aim, he remembers the lessons his father taught him at a very young age. How young, you might ask? Well, don't let Hank's adult voice trying to sound like a baby fool you. This boy is still very much a child.
I want my binky back.
You want your binky back?
I know this episode isn't directly about Cotton, but it kinda is, and it's great to see how exactly Hank has been affected by that rather intense tutelage. Between Cotton's horrible sex education program, the snipe hunt, and now these gun lessons, it is a bald-ass miracle that Hank turned out to be a functioning human being. I mean, just listen to this. Imagine if your father or anybody when you were a kid told you this.
All of you will be drafted in a war. Some of you, like Hank, will be killed.
Brutal. Because of Hank's disappointment with himself, what was once a shared hobby with his son now becomes a source of anger and discomfort. The more excited Bobby becomes, the more Hank is afraid of letting him down. For once, it is Hank that is on the weaker side of the fence. No amount of father knows best embroidered snuggies is going to change the fact that now Hank is the Bobby of the family, at least when it comes to the act of shooting. Which, I'm not going to sit here and play armchair psychologist and say that this is threatening Hank's manhood, but he definitely begins to fall back on other factors that make him feel like a big man.
Let's see him hold down a job and be so good.
In an effort to kill Bobby's interest in guns, Hank enrolls Bobby in a safety course which is run by this overly excited man. How excited, you may ask? Well, let's just say it wasn't a Bear or Barbara Streisand that took his eye and thumb.
Hey, look at this! Look at this, everybody!
Oh, and look, Luann is sewing Bobby's safety patch on his vest. Bringing characters in for stuff like that, for these seemingly small and inconsequential tasks, really makes the world feel so lived in, so populated. This is making me wonder why Min and Bobby didn't become a shooting team when she got into the whole skeet shooting competition at Nine Rivers. I know that's supposed to be like her big bonding moment with Dale of all people, but come on, how adorable would it have been to see Bobby and Min become like this little team together? They've got such great chemistry. I would have loved to have seen that. That would have been just so cute. But whatever, this is the real world where plots are disappointing and Peggy pronounces carpe diem like this.
Carpe diem.
You and your pride and your ego.
In an effort to escape Peggy's nonsense, Hank takes Bobby down to the range, where Bobby really starts getting on Hank's case about how he's handling himself, and I can kinda start to see why Hank is getting nervous and why it is making him flash back to his dad's hard-ass instruction on him. While at the range, he runs into... Holy crap, it's Wallace Shawn! Wallace Shawn!
Losers are very predictable. Here's my card.
While some of you probably know him from that forgettable nothing of a movie, The Princess Bride, the real OGs know him as Grand Nagus Zek from Deep Space Nine. Oh god, and I think I do a great impression of him too. I would play a comparison, but Paramount almost pulled the Lorraine Bobbitt on me last time, so just find a damn clip of your own. Here I go. My, Hank, it looks like you're having problems with your gun. God, I love the Nagus. Anyway, something about blah blah blah, this guy's a sports psychologist or something, he gets his business from helping losers overcome their fears. Whatever, I'll go with it, I'll believe you, Nagus. If you say it makes a profit, then goddammit, it makes a profit! Besides, he's a rather charming fellow, even with that Bill Cosby windbreaker on. And he seems to be running mental circles around Hank, pulling a Joseph Joestar and predicting what Hank's about to do.
Here's my card. You're going to tear it up.
Continuing this bizarre adventure, Bobby offers to bring his gun to school and, quote, squeeze off a few rounds between class, unquote. And okay, no matter what your age, these days hearing something like that has gotta be a little strange. Even if you and your friends did something like that back in the day, in these current times we have lost a degree of innocence, possibly forever.
You shouldn't take guns to school with you, they're dangerous.
Guns are dangerous?
What?
You know, it's hard to tell if this stuff has aged poorly or if the satire of people refusing to see guns as dangerous objects is just the most topical thing ever. Considering how poorly some folk will treat and store their weapons, I tend to think it's the latter. And hey, you know, I gotta put my hands up here, I'm not against these kind of jokes, I find them funny. I just miss back in the day when they were still jokes, instead of a crystal clear mirror into the thought processes of modern audiences.
Guns don't kill people, the government does.
And you know, rather than focus on Dale's ranting, which, don't get it twisted, that whole hypothetical question of how you're gonna shoot someone without a gun is just gold, I instead want to pull our attention to Hank's rebuttal.
Dale, the NRA is a Washington, D.C. based organization. Are you telling me you support Washington, D.C.?
That's a thinker.
And this is as far as the show is willing to go into the whole gun control debate, and even then, we're not quite sure if these are Hank's genuine feelings about the subject, or if he's just covering for his own embarrassment. In either case, the result is the same. He deadass tells Bobby that he will not be participating in the fun shoot, which sends Bobby spiraling into that like little kid depression, where you blame yourself for everything and feel like the lowest thing to ever walk the earth. That stuff really hits hard and can set in some long-lasting personal issues. Not wanting Bobby to turn into, me, Peggy goes to Hank and asks what's gotten into him. Forced into a corner and with nothing else left to lose, Hank sits down on this, weird bench in the garage and confesses that he cannot shoot, resulting in perhaps Peggy's greatest line so far.
Peggy, I can't shoot.
What?
I can't.
I still love you.
Come on now, that is true blue love right there. When you admit to your girl that you have this big, unforgivable, disgusting flaw, and she can push down her oceanic shame and still profess her love for your sorry ass, what a lady. With Peggy now at his back, Hank pulls Bobby out of this weird funk and says that they'll do the fun shoot together. Sadly though, Bobby has his sights set rather high, reminding his dad that no hill has been a loser since the days of the Alamo, which makes Hank scared enough to go seek counseling from the Grand Nagus himself.
Well, I can help you without using witchcraft, pills, and molestation, but it won't be easy. We add audio to the visualization to achieve complete focus.
Gosh, I could listen to Wallace Shawn talk about visualization and butterflies all day. It is so soothing, which is really needed right now.
Hey, shaky! Close the other eye or I'll poke it out!
And smartly, instead of allowing Hank to drone on and on about his father issues, old Zeki gets things back on track and makes Hank practice sending a plane into the target, quickly overcoming his fears. It seems as if Hank's desire to make Bobby proud, combined with the whole "to the end of the rainbow" mantra, is enough to drown out his memories of his father. Some may call this unrealistic, but I say it spends just enough time developing his techniques to work. Besides, he doesn't instantly do better, it is somewhat of a gradual uptick. And hey look, old Zek even came out to Hank's competition, reminding him of his concentration techniques. Now there's a guy who believes in your success. Love that. And you know what else I love is the whole creativity of the shooting competition.
Followed by the pretend to be sleeping, grab the loaded gun under the bed and shoot a figure in the shadows.
The format is broad enough to keep things exciting, and allowing us to hear Hank's inner thoughts is the delightful cherry on this whipped cream bikini.
Something rainbow, over the rainbow, to the end of the yellow brick road. How about a little fire, Scarecrow?
If the Boggle montage was last season's big triumphant moment, then this one manages to capture that same magic. Or maybe it's just all the girls in Daisy Dukes walking around.
Sorry I'm late. I had to stop by the Wax Museum again and give the finger to FDR.
Oh god, all these girlies and their lemonade have summoned Cotton Hill to the battleground, forcing Hank to confront his problems directly. And boy, Cotton is really spitting into Hank's backswing here. He cannot help himself from pushing Hank to his limits.
Accuracy? Better hope that target's the side of a barn. That's my grandson. And his father.
After having a drawn-out inner monologue, Hank takes aim, fires, and misses. Oh, the all is lost moment. Pack it up, everyone. The good guys have lost. God is dead and the devil's wearing snowshoes. Tisk, tisk. But from the ashes of this defeat comes a surprising spark of hope.
We did it, Dad! Second place in a real father-son tournament. Can I put it on my wall? This is the best day ever. You're the best dad ever. I'm the best son ever. Can we do it again next year?
Ah, God, it's just the freaking sweetest thing ever. Bobby didn't care about getting first place. He never did. Okay, well, he kinda did. A lot of what he said implied it, but I mean, this whole thing he says before the final shoot seems pretty ambiguous to me.
Remember, son, we're just here to do our best.
That's 'cause we are the best, Dad.
And yet, perhaps this is a sign that Bobby is beginning to mature. Even if he's a little disappointed in his heart that he got second place, he does not allow that to show. In fact, I kinda like the idea that Bobby was let down by Hank, perhaps for the very first time ever, and found that, hey, guess what? It doesn't matter. They still had fun, they still spent quality time together, and this leaves room for improvement next year. Do you know how stressful it is to be number one all the time? When you have that sort of attitude, it then becomes all about counting points and staying on top of your game no matter what. Everything after that is just a downward decline into the grave. No, no, no! Embrace being second. Hell, take pride in being last, because then you have a whole world of progression in front of you, and that, my friends, is the greatest high of them all. Oh, and as Bobby and Hank begin to triumphantly walk into the sun, it is starting to go supernova over there. I guess Sephiroth had something to say about the shooting competition, so you know what, I guess there won't be a next year. Should've gotten first place this time. Whatever, guess you'll just die a loser. A loved and treasured loser. What a world. So how did this whole thing feel? Was it a bullseye, or was it just shooting blanks? Well, I do have to say that I think they could have done a bit better job of making Bobby's mood feel a little more ambiguous. Even though they succeed in making me feel really good at the end, once you know that's where this is all going, all the stuff about Bobby talking about how much he'd hate to be a loser and how winning is everything, it then becomes this weird disconnect. It feels like a bit of a mixed message. I love all the counseling stuff, and the gun competition itself is a tour de force, but Bobby is the odd-fitting puzzle piece here, which is not good, as he is kind of the thing that ties all of this together.
Sometimes people choke, Bobby. We just gotta be proud that God took the time to give us a fault.
That's loser talk. You taught me that.
Everything else is super strong, especially Hank's worries. I actually think that's the best part of this story. Finally getting to see Hank having to develop a skill and catch up to someone else is great. We tend to think of him as the guy who can do anything, and watching him struggle adds so much to his character. That's what really makes this thing shine. Not the gun commentary or the guy with the blown off thumb, but Hank trying to slay his anxiety demons for the sake of his son. It resonates, but it's just not enough to break the glass, if you know what I mean. But maybe I'm being too much of a stiff. What do you think? Is it okay that Bobby is like kind of weird here? Or do you even think that he's weird? What is going on with him? Do you think it's, a good fit or not? I tend to be pretty critical of King of the Hill, mostly because I like it so darn much, but I don't want to just sit here and heap piles of love after love on it. That just tends to drive people away. Anyway, while you're busy getting into a 50-chain comment argument about how good this fictional boy is, I'll be diving into the world of fuel filters, trailer parks, and tornadoes.
What? Oh.
I don't know why, but I love that expression and the sound he makes. It just tickles me so. Let me hear it again.
What? Oh.
Good stuff. Anyway, until next time, I think we can say that this episode, titled How to Fire a Rifle Without Really Trying, bit of a mouthful there, has indeed been reviewed to death. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, kid.